Thomas Mendenhall. My rank was Captain, United States Naval Reserve, when I retired in 1995.
So what made you join the military in the first place?
Well, primarily, two reasons. One, I wanted a good education, and two, my best friend's father was a retired Army colonel, and he was real big on academies. So my best friend and I applied to academies, and we got accepted, so we both went.
Did you enjoy your time while you were in the Navy?
Absolutely. Just too much time away from home, but other than that, I enjoyed it.
Could you explain what it would be like, what it was like working on the submarine?
I don't know if we have enough time to explain it fully, but it's not for everybody. The quarters are cramped. If you have any kind of claustrophobia, you don't want to go there. I shared a stateroom with two other officers, and I had one of the best places to sleep on the boat. So, some of the enlisted slept in 21-man bunk rooms, which were pretty tight. The ship was divided. We call them boats. Submariners call them boats. It's really the ships I were on were displaced 8,000 tons, which is about the size of a cruiser during World War II. But we lovingly refer to them as boats. All submariners do. So the boat was divided with watertight bulkheads, which are walls, and to go from one part of the ship to the other, you had to crawl through a hole that was much smaller than you are tall. So it was hard to get around, but it was, if you didn't have claustrophobia and you liked the work, it was pretty nice stuff. If you've ever been to the Museum of Science and Industry up in Chicago, where they show you the World War II German submarine, nothing like that. It's much bigger, much easier to get around.
What parts of the world have you seen during your time in the military?
Actually, quite fewer than you might think, especially in the submarine service, because the first ship I was on, the first boat, was stationed in Holyloch, Scotland. So I saw a little bit of Scotland, but we'd fly over, we'd fix everything that broke on that previous cruise, then we'd take it out, and we'd just basically hide in the North Atlantic Ocean somewhere and point missiles at the targets we were directed to point missiles at. So we didn't go anywhere. Our primary mission was to remain undetected, so we cruised that way. And the second submarine I was on was new construction, so for 2.5 years, I was in Newport News, Virginia, in the shipyard building the submarine. So I saw more of my time at the Naval Academy. I got to do a first class, my first cruise was after the beginning of my first year. We did a lot in the Caribbean and that kind of stuff. And the second cruise was on an LST out of Yokosuka, Japan, so I got to see a little bit of Japan and Philippines and that. But other than that, I didn't do a lot of traveling in the Navy. I did a lot more traveling after I got out of the Navy than in the Navy. And that's kind of the life of a submariner. A lot of places don't want you to come into their ports because of the nuclear power plant that you got and nuclear weapons you have on board, possibly.
So you did carry nuclear weapons aboard the submarines?
Well, obviously, the strategic ballistic missile submarines carried, the class I was on was, they called it a 627 class. It was Stonewall Jackson. And it had 16 missiles. Each missile had multiple nuclear warheads.
Wow.
The other submarine may or may not have nuclear weapons. I'm not at liberty to say.
So did you ever have to engage in combat during your time in the Navy?
Combat, no, in the classic sense. It was a Cold War when I was in. I was in from, went to the Naval Academy in '67, graduated in '71, was active duty '71 to '79, and then was in the reserves until '95. And during that time, Vietnam was winding down when I graduated from the Naval Academy. I was in the Atlantic, not the Pacific, so I didn't fight there. And when I was in the reserves, Desert Storm occurred, but we were not mobilized for that, so no hand-to-hand. Back in October of '73, the Arabs and the Israelis went at it in what they called their Yom Kippur War. And at that very time, I was getting ready, we were getting ready to go out on my third patrol on the ballistic missile submarine. And of course, the way those work is we fly over to Holyloch, Scotland. The other crew brought the boat back from their patrol. We spend a few days turning the boat over, so to speak, so that we take control of the boat. They fly home, and we fix the boat for about 3 weeks. Anything that's broken, and all maintenance that needs to get done, all of that kind of stuff. So we're working on the boat in Holyloch, Scotland, tied up next to a submarine tender, and suddenly the Arabs and the Israelis go at it in the Yom Kippur War. And I remember, I'm the machinery division officer. I'm in charge of all the nuclear mechanical systems. So I'm back in our engineering spaces. We have torn out all of our seawater piping for the reactor that cools reactor components, and it's all laying on the deck, taken apart, cleaning it out because they had some cooling issues. And my engineer comes back and he says, "We're going to sea tomorrow. Get everything put back together." And I remember looking at him and I said, "Well, what boat are we going in? Because it's not going to be this one." "Take a look, engineer. We're not getting this." "You don't understand. Captain told the squadron commander we could go to sea tomorrow. President set DEFCON 3, which is Defense Condition 3, which means all boats go to sea." "Okay." And the captain said, "We're going to sea." "So we're going to sea." "All right." I said, "All right. What you need to do, engineer, is turn around and leave because you're not going to like what you see." And so we spent all night putting every system back together. And by 7 o'clock the next morning, we had the reactor up, critical, running, and the engineer comes back and says, "Good, we're ready to go." And I go, "One request, engineer. When we go out and dive real slow. Because none of these seawater systems have been hydrostatically tested. I don't know if they're going to leak. I don't know what they're going to do. But that was part of the process of putting them back together." I go, "Yeah, in peacetime. This is war, right? We didn't have time for the paperwork, so we're going to have to do the paperwork on the way out." He goes, "Okay, fine." So we sailed out, and true to my request, we went down real slowly, and we fixed all the leaks that were there. And we went to sea. And then, 2 days later, the war was over, and the squadron commander sent us a message. Says, "If you want to come back and finish your loadout, come on back." We go, "Nah, we're good. We'll just go on patrol." So we set a then time record of 77 days underwater on a patrol. So that was pretty cool.